So the third precept deals with, well, there's different ways of phrasing it: sexuality, sensuality, desire, and in conjunction with the commentary, which is also on YouTube, Desire and Intimacy, I thought I'd just do a short talk, hopefully short, around the idea of desire. Desire is one of the primary places that we come up against this question. If a lot of the time within Buddhism we're told that the idea is to move towards a position of being a no self, or that the self is an illusion, and certainly if our idea of nirvana is extinction, then that involves losing desire, because it's exactly that desire which causes karma, which causes our suffering, harming of others and self in the world. And that's not the ordinary mind way. And we get both senses within Zen, I think, at different points and in different contexts. So within ordinary mind, we're more interested in the play between our sense of self and not self, between what I identify, what I feel is me, and what I definitely not me. We get curious. So part of that is getting curious about desire, rather than, how can I lose desire or control desire? It's much more, what do I actually feel? Why? Do I feel that way all the time? How does this connect up with everything else in my life? It's complicated. And so if we talk about the idea of selfing, the self as a verb, as a process, our desiring is a really, really good context in which to experience and become aware of that process of selfing, being the self that I am now, in this moment and this moment. We experience our desire as very close, very intimate, very much me, the bit that goes deepest. I can have thoughts, I can have opinions, I can change those moment to moment. Okay, maybe I have real beliefs, ideals, which seem like the heart of me, but desire somehow seems to settle deeper within us. So, in terms of desire and the other side of desire, revulsion, disgust, are both very, very powerful strains of emotion for us. What do I hold to me? What do I push away? What do I turn away from, ignore? And the pushing away and the ignoring are both ways in which we get to something which is right at the core of ordinary mind practice, this idea of resistance. What am I resisting? Because it's where I'm resisting, where I feel that pressure of the world, either me as part of the world or the outside world. That's where I'm really experiencing. That's where I'm not, for a moment, a millisecond, purely in my fantasies, my aspirations, my memories, but in this moment, in the world that is, as Joko Beck says, life as it is, as our practice principles say. I've got a phrase that I like, bit of a tongue twister. We have to admit that we don't always want to want what we want, or want what we want to want. It's complicated, which is to say, desire is a passion. Desire pulls me. And to a large extent, I don't get to choose. In a sense, desire is all about that aspect that I'm, shall I do that or shall I do that? No, it's that pull, that hook. I might want to want that, or I might not want to want that, but I still do. And equally, I might want to want that, but frankly, I just don't. Why might I want to want it? Well, I might think that's a good idea, or I might think that's what normal people do, or I might think that's what I'm supposed to do, or my parents do. You know the deal. Desire is complicated. It challenges us. This sticky bit of real world which rears up in front of us. And, it can be wonderful. It can lead us into all kinds of places. Desire is, in that sense, passion. This is this route, not action, not something I choose to do, but something which finds me, pulls us out. And of course, if we're thinking about the precepts, the fifth precept is all about when we're not thinking especially rationally, and we traditionally link that up with alcohol, drugs, things which cause heedlessness. Well, our hormones cause heedlessness, and the kind of hormones that are aroused by desire certainly cause us heedlessness. We're off, and yet again, we're passion. Traditionally, right across traditions, right across the world, we talk about this as kind of madness. We might talk about as the influence of different forces. But however we want to think about it, it's one of the ways in which I can most directly experience the complexity and the contradiction of being this self. Like I say, if I feel this desire in this moment, is that always the case? Did I want that last week? Well, I want it next week. Is this a passing moment? Is this something which seems to connect up with the depths of my being? Either way, our desiring points us quite directly to the limits of our, use two proper words, agency, autonomy, this idea that I decide things, I decide about me. Well, yeah, to a degree, but also no. And the way that our insistence on our agency, our insistence on our full autonomy is, at the end of the day, actually just a way of denying our vulnerability. The vulnerability that's the real mark of the relative nature of our autonomy, and the fact that, into being, into connection, I'm only this person because of all of you, because of everybody else in the world. I exist as a social being, not in some abstract intellectual sense, but in a direct, absolutely connected, physically reliant, emotionally coming to be in the same space, shared language, shared sense of feeling, shared emotional responses, and physical dependence. That kind of dependence we had as an infant, in some ways, for both better and worse, we never really get over. And desire shows us all that within ourselves if we'll pause, if we'll sit with it. And as with everything in our ordinary mind practice, neither rush off to do it or go, no, that's not me, no, and start building our walls. And if we're talking about a sense of intimacy, and we're talking about relationship, because that's the direction in which intimacy in that sense leads us. If we're talking about relationships, intimacy with others, then we really do need to be intimate with ourselves in that sense, in this very direct sense of being with, understanding, experiencing ourselves, this self in this moment that's not the same as me then. It's me now, and now, and now. So the question is, with our desire, with our intimacy, what are the aspects that I turn towards, but also, in a way, almost even more interestingly, what are the aspects that I turn away from? What about my own sense of, hurt in terms of desire, in terms of the experience of sexuality maybe, but this is something which we can talk about in relationship to all our relationships, our feelings, our emotions. And if at one end of the spectrum there's the experience of trauma, which may well be triggering, and that's very difficult, but it's no less the case that, in terms of relationships, being dumped, being turned down, being shamed by somebody, or even this body, to the extent that it does or doesn't look the way I feel it should, or that I would like it to look, or that the person that I would like to be would look, or that it should perform in this way and doesn't perform in this way. It's kind of frustrations, anxieties, angers. It seems really important and essential to begin to allow ourselves to feel into these corners of our desire, which may at one sense be, who do I feel sexually attracted towards? But in another sense, it's just this sense of being, this physicality, this wanting, this needing, this reacting to those around me, to myself, to aspects of myself. What do I feel I can't talk about? What am I not even recognizing that I really feel I can't talk about it? So what are my terms we've been developing as we've gone on, dissociating from? Where is it that this self, this me now, doesn't want to go, won't go? And again, at one end, we can talk about that as a very social thing, a collective thing. So something like #MeToo. And I go, well, why? Why haven't we been able to talk about these feelings, these experiences of so many women, and just go, we don't talk about that, we don't notice that, it's just the way the world is. Why? Why not until recently have we been able to do that? Or the issues about women feeling safe in public space. Why is that something we couldn't talk about? But then equally, in terms of this me, this body, this experience here now, those micro things, it's just affect me personally too. They're all social in a sense, they all connect up. But this vast range of experience, which is our difficulty, is our itch is our turning away. Ultimately, it comes down to self-honesty. But self-honesty is unbelievably difficult. And we're not self-honest, we're not self-dishonest out of stupidity or badness or anything like that. It's just the way that our world has been constructed for us. But we can move towards that. We can turn towards that gently, carefully, slowly, and that's what our practice always is. It's returning and returning and returning and finding our boundary, finding our limit, respecting that, returning. A process, years, decades, a lifetime. Not work to be done and ticked off, next please. No, it's a process, it's forever. So self-honesty, which doesn't involve a sense of personal failure, shame, wrongness, that these are all smoke screens we use to distract ourselves, we use to stop dead a process of investigation, which is an incredibly important part of living itself. And if, in this very specific sense, we allow ourselves to become more intimate with ourselves, we have a much better basis on which to do the other work of relationship, to turn outwards towards others. And when we do that, what kind of self are we? Do we see ourselves as we are so often encouraged to do, as separate, bounded, independent, autonomous, and you the same? And effectively we take out a contract with each other, whether that's for some intimate act or the conditions under which we'll agree to spend a lifetime together. And then we can see whether the contract was fulfilled, whether I got out of it what I was expecting to, whether you were making unreasonable demands, etc., etc. Or, in the Western romantic tradition, do we two become as one? Do we become one soul? And imagine that we merge interests, merge feelings. I only want what you want, or actually, I think you must naturally want what I want. And the kind of complexity that inevitably generates, and disillusion when we find out we are not one. Maybe we want the same things, maybe we want different things. Maybe we end up playing codependent games with each other. Maybe it turns into a weird game of passive-aggressive or coercive control. Who knows? There are so many ways that this can go. Or can we recognise each other and recognise that just as our humanity asks us to recognise each other as independent in relationship to each other. I'm only me because you're you in the most general possible sense. Can you be the me for you and me be the you for me? In that sense, can we find common ground that respects our recognition? This space that Jessica Benjamin talks about in terms of the third, this thing which isn't you, isn't me, but is a shared space we hold together. That's interesting because that would be not one of fusion, not the two of contracting, but in our terms, not separate. And not two is one of the ways which we figures end, in fact. It's not the erasure of all difference in a sea of whatever it is a sea of, and it's not standing here separate. It's admitting our absolute interconnection. The possibility of moving forward to discover we don't know. Because we're open, because we're related, because possibility is infinite. And I'm only in a position to do that, to be intimate with you, to the extent that I can be intimate with me also. And in fact, the two move forward together, ideally. Seeing your sameness, seeing your difference, shows me my sameness, my difference, my multifaceted. Back to Whitman's, I contain multitudes. Intimate with self, intimate with each other. Not two, not one, but not two, not separate.